When my son called me that afternoon, his voice shaking through the phone, I almost didn't answer. I was in the middle of a hotel lobby, surrounded by colleagues, my mind occupied with presentations and deadlines. The screen lit up with his name, Tommy, and for a split second I considered letting it go to voicemail. After all, I had spoken to him just that morning. He knew I was busy. He knew this was an important trip for me. But something made me step away from the noise. Something made me press that green button and bring the phone to my ear. Mommy. His voice was small, barely above a whisper. Tommy? What's wrong, sweetheart? I could feel my heartbeat quicken. A mother knows. A mother always knows when something is not right. Mommy, don't come home. Those 4 words stopped me in my tracks. The bustle of the lobby faded into a distant hum. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, trying to make sense of what I just heard. What do you mean, baby? What happened? Please, Mommy. Don't come home. Not yet. Not tomorrow. I felt cold all over. My hands began to tremble. Around me, people moved with purpose, dragging suitcases, laughing, checking their watches. But I stood frozen, clutching that phone like it was the only real thing in the world. Tommy, you're scaring me. Tell me what's going on. There was silence on the other end. Not the silence of an empty line, but the silence of a child trying to find the courage to speak. I could hear him breathing, short and uneven, like he'd been crying. Daddy doesn't know I'm calling you, he finally said. I heard him, Mommy. I heard him talking. My mind raced through 1,000 possibilities. Was he hurt? Was someone in the house? Was there a break-in? Talking to who, Tommy? What did you hear? Another pause. Longer this time. And then, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, he said the words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. He said he's going to make it look like an accident. I don't remember sitting down. I don't remember the concerned looks from strangers as I sank onto a nearby bench. All I remember is the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, and my son's frightened breathing on the other end of the line. Who, Tommy? Who is he talking about? You, Mommy. He was talking about you. And just like that, the life I thought I had, the marriage I believed in, the future I had planned, the man I trusted with everything, began to crumble like sand slipping through my fingers. Let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you about the life I thought I was living before that phone call changed everything. My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old, or at least I was when this story began. I've always been the kind of person who believed in doing things right. I studied hard in school. I worked my way up in my career. I married a good man, or so I thought. I became a mother. I built what I believed was a beautiful, stable life. My husband's name is David. When I met him 8 years ago, he seemed like everything I'd been looking for. He was confident without being arrogant, successful without being consumed by work, handsome in that subtle, understated way that grows on you over time. He had warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and a voice that always sounded calm, even in moments of stress. We met at a professional conference. I was presenting a paper on digital marketing strategies, and he approached me afterward with thoughtful questions. Not the usual surface-level comments people make when they're just trying to be polite. He actually listened. He actually cared. Or at least that's what I believed. Our courtship was like something out of a romance novel. Dinners at quiet restaurants where we talked for hours. Weekend drives to small towns we'd never visited. He brought me flowers, not roses but wildflowers, because he'd noticed I mentioned once that I preferred them. He remembered the little things. The way I took my coffee. The name of my childhood dog. The song that made me cry. When he proposed, it was simple and perfect. No grand gesture. No public spectacle. Just the two of us on a beach at sunset, and a quiet question that felt like the most natural thing in the world. Will you build a life with me? I said yes without hesitation. How could I not? He was everything I wanted. Everything I thought I needed. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. My mother cried. His parents seemed genuinely happy. Everything felt right. Everything felt safe. Tommy came along 2 years after we married. My beautiful boy with his father's eyes and my stubbornness. From the moment they placed him in my arms, I felt a love so fierce it frightened me. I looked at David holding our son for the first time and I thought, this is it. This is the family I always dreamed of. David was a good father, at least on the surface. He changed diapers without complaint. He got up for midnight feedings. He attended every doctor's appointment, every milestone. When Tommy took his first steps, David was there with the camera, capturing every wobbling moment. But looking back now, with the clarity that only comes from betrayal, I can see the cracks that were always there. I just chose not to look at them. Or maybe I didn't know how to look at them. Tommy was 6 years old when everything fell apart. A bright, sensitive child who loved dinosaurs and drawing and asking endless questions about how the world worked. He was the kind of boy who noticed things, who paid attention in ways that adults often don't. "Why does Daddy smile different when he talks on the phone?" he asked me once. I laughed it off. "Everyone has different kinds of smiles, sweetheart." "But it's not a real smile," he insisted. "It's a pretend one. Children see things we don't want to see. They speak truths we don't want to hear. And too often we dismiss them. We tell them they're imagining things. We tell them they're too young to understand." I did that to Tommy more times than I can count. And I will carry that guilt with me for the rest of my life. The business trip that changed everything was supposed to be routine. 3 days in Chicago for a conference on emerging market trends. I'd been to dozens of these events before. I'd left Tommy with David dozens of times before. There was no reason to think this time would be any different. I packed my suitcase the night before, laying out my presentations and checking my schedule for the 100th time. David sat on the bed watching me with that calm smile of his. "You're going to do great," he said. "You always do." "I just want everything to be perfect," I replied, folding another blouse into my bag. "It will be. And Tommy and I will be fine. We'll have our boys' weekend. Pizza and movies and staying up too late." Tommy appeared in the doorway, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. "Do you have to go, Mommy?" I knelt down and pulled him into a hug. "Just for a few days, baby. And then I'll be back before you know it. Promise." "I promise." He hugged me tighter than usual. Looking back, I wonder if some part of him already knew. If some instinct was trying to warn me even then. The morning I left, David drove me to the airport. He helped me with my bags and kissed me goodbye at the curb. "Safe travels," he said. "I love you." "I love you too." I watched him drive away, and I felt nothing but gratitude for my life. My perfect life. My perfect family. My perfect husband. I had no idea I would never see him the same way again. The conference itself was fine. Boring if I'm being honest. Endless panels and networking sessions and hotel coffee that tasted like dishwater. I participated when I needed to. I smiled and shook hands and exchanged business cards. But mostly I thought about home. About Tommy's soccer game on Saturday. About the grocery list I'd left for David. About all the small, ordinary details of a life I thought was secure. I called home every night. Tommy would tell me about his day, what he had for lunch, what game he played at recess, what dinosaur fact he'd learned. David would take the phone and tell me everything was fine. That I should focus on my work. That they had everything under control. His voice was always calm. Always reassuring. Always the same. I believed every word. On the second night, Tommy seemed quieter than usual. He answered my questions with one-word responses. When I asked if he was feeling okay, he said he was just tired. "Let me talk to Daddy," I said. "He's in the shower," Tommy replied quickly. Too quickly. "Okay, baby. Well, you get some rest. I'll call you tomorrow." "Okay. Mommy." "Yes, sweetheart. I miss you." "I miss you too, Tommy. So much." After I hung up, I felt a strange unease. Nothing I could name or explain. Just a feeling that something was slightly off. But I pushed it away. I told myself I was being silly. That I was just tired and missing my family. I wish I had listened to that feeling. I wish I had trusted my instincts the way I would soon trust Tommy's. The next day was when everything changed. The day Tommy called me in the lobby. The day he told me not to come home. The day my entire world shifted on its axis. I need you to understand something before I continue. I need you to understand that up until that moment, I had no reason to doubt David. No reason to question anything about our marriage or our life together. Yes, there were small things that seemed odd in hindsight. But at the time they felt like nothing. Less than nothing. The late-night phone calls he took in his office with the door closed. The passwords he changed without telling me. The way he sometimes looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. A look I couldn't quite read, couldn't quite understand. I told myself it was work stress. I told myself every marriage has its private moments. I told myself I was overthinking things because I was tired, because being a mother and a professional was exhausting, because life was just complicated sometimes. But standing in that hotel lobby, hearing my 6-year-old son's terrified voice telling me not to come home, I realized that all those small things weren't nothing at all. They were everything. They were the truth I'd been too comfortable, too trusting, too naive to see. After Tommy's call, I couldn't breathe properly. I sat on that bench in the hotel lobby for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. People walked past me. The world continued. But I felt like I was drowning in the middle of dry land. "Tommy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tommy, baby, I need you to tell me exactly what you heard. Can you do that for me?" He was crying now. Soft, scared crying that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. "I don't want you to be mad at me. I could never be mad at you. Never. You did the right thing by calling me. You're so brave, Tommy. So brave. Now tell me what happened." He took a shaky breath. "I couldn't sleep last night. I had a bad dream about monsters. I got up to find Daddy, but he wasn't in his room. So I went downstairs to look for him." "Okay. And where was he?" "In his office." The door was almost closed, but not all the way. There was a little gap. And I heard him talking on the phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. "What was he saying, Tommy?" "He was talking about you. About when you come home tomorrow. He said." Tommy's voice broke. "He said something about the breaks. About making sure. About how it had to look real." The world tilted. The lobby spun. I thought I might vomit right there on the polished hotel floor. "Are you sure, Tommy? Are you absolutely sure that's what you heard?" "Yes, Mommy. I'm sure. He said your name. He said Sarah. He said it has to happen tomorrow night when she drives home from the airport. He said it has to look like an accident." I closed my eyes, opened them. The lobby was still there. Tommy was still on the phone. This was real. This was actually happening. "Did he see you? Does he know you heard him?" "No." I ran back to my room really fast. And I pretended to be asleep when he came to check on me later. "But Mommy, I'm scared. I'm so scared." "I know, baby. I know. But you did exactly the right thing. You saved my life. Do you understand that? You saved my life." I could hear him crying harder now. "I don't want you to die, Mommy. I don't want Daddy to hurt you." "He won't. I promise you he won't. Because we're going to be smart about this. We're going to be so smart. Now listen to me very carefully. Are you listening?" "Yes. I need you to act completely normal. Can you do that? Pretend like nothing is wrong. Eat your breakfast. Play your games. Don't let Daddy know anything is different. Can you be that brave for me?" "I think so. I know you can. You're the bravest boy I've ever known. And Tommy, don't call me again unless it's an emergency. I don't want Daddy to see that you've been using the phone." "Okay. Okay. I love you so much. More than anything in the whole world." "I love you too, Mommy." When the call ended, I sat there holding my phone, staring at the screen like it might offer me some kind of answer. Some kind of explanation for how my life had just been turned completely upside down. David, my husband, the father of my child, the man I trusted with everything, the man I'd built a life with, he was planning to kill me. The thought was so absurd, so impossible that part of me wanted to laugh. This had to be a mistake, a misunderstanding. Maybe Tommy had heard wrong. Maybe he'd been half asleep and confused. Maybe this was all just a terrible mix-up that would be cleared up with a simple phone call. But deep in my gut, in that place where mothers know things, where women's intuition lives, I knew it was true. I knew Tommy wouldn't lie about something like this. I knew he wouldn't call me in tears, terrified and shaking, unless he absolutely believed what he was telling me. And when I let myself really think about it, when I forced myself to look at my marriage without the filter of hope and love and denial, I could see it. All of it. The way David had been lately. More distracted. More distant. More irritated by small things that never used to bother him. The way he'd been pushing me to take this trip even though I'd initially thought about canceling. "You need this," he'd said. You've been working so hard. You deserve a break. The way he'd insisted on driving me to the airport himself, even though I'd offered to take an Uber. I want to, he'd said. Let me do this for you. The way he'd been so interested in what time my flight landed tomorrow, what time I'd be home, what route I usually took from the airport. Just so I know when to expect you, he'd said with that smile. That warm, trustworthy smile I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. Oh God. Oh God, oh God, oh God. I thought I might pass out. I put my head between my knees and focused on breathing. In and out. In and out. Like the therapist I'd seen years ago had taught me when I dealt with anxiety. People were staring now. A hotel employee approached, concern on her face. Ma'am? Are you all right? Do you need help? I looked up at her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her shoulders and shout that my husband was trying to kill me. That my 6-year-old son had just saved my life. That everything I thought I knew was a lie. Instead I smiled. Some automatic response, some ingrained need to appear normal. I'm fine. Thank you. Just got some difficult news. I'm okay. She didn't look convinced, but she backed away politely. Let us know if you need anything. I nodded and pulled out my phone again. My first instinct was to call David. To confront him. To demand answers. But I stopped myself. That would be the worst thing I could do. If he knew that I knew, there was no telling what he might do. And Tommy was alone with him. My baby was alone with a man who was planning murder. I needed to think. I needed to be smart. I needed to figure out what to do next. First, I had to make sure Tommy was safe. But how? I couldn't call the police. What would I tell them? My 6-year-old overheard something that might be a murder plot? They'd think I was crazy. They'd want to investigate, which would alert David, which would put Tommy in danger. No. I had to handle this carefully. Strategically. I went up to my hotel room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and tried to organize my thoughts. Tried to make sense of the senseless. Why would David want me dead? The question pounded in my head. We had a good life. A comfortable life. Yes, marriage had its challenges, but we were happy. Weren't we? Or had I been the only one who was happy? I thought about our finances. David handled most of that. He said it was easier that way since he worked in finance. He said I shouldn't worry my head about it. That he had everything under control. I'd let him. I'd been grateful actually. One less thing to think about. One less responsibility on my plate. But now I wondered. What did I actually know about our financial situation? I knew we had money in the bank. I knew the bills were paid. But beyond that, I opened my laptop and logged into our joint bank account. Something I rarely did. The balance looked normal. Nothing alarming. But then I noticed something. Regular transfers. Large ones. Going from our account to another account I didn't recognize. I felt cold all over. I dug deeper, going through months of statements. The transfers had been happening for almost a year. $20,000 here. $30,000 there. All going to this mysterious account. What else didn't I know? I thought about David's life insurance policy on me. He'd taken it out 3 years ago. Just to be safe, he'd said. Just in case anything happens. I want to make sure Tommy is taken care of. It had seemed thoughtful at the time. Responsible. The act of a caring husband and father. Now it seemed like something else entirely. Like preparation. Like planning. How much was that policy worth? $500,000? More? My stomach turned. I ran to the bathroom and dry heaved over the toilet. Nothing came up. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. But my body was trying to purge something that couldn't be purged. The truth. The reality. The betrayal. When I finally stopped shaking, I splashed water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My skin was pale. I looked like a ghost. I felt like a ghost. The woman in the mirror was someone I didn't recognize. Someone whose husband wanted her dead. Someone who had been so blind, so trusting, so stupid. No, not stupid. I couldn't think that way. I'd done nothing wrong. I'd been a good wife. A good mother. A good person. David was the one who'd done this. David was the one who'd made these choices. And I was the one who was going to survive them. I went back to my laptop and started searching. I looked up our life insurance policy and found the documents. $500,000. Payable to David in the event of my accidental death. Accidental death. Tommy's words echoed in my head. He said it has to look like an accident. I kept digging. I looked at David's phone records. We were on a family plan so I could access them online. Hundreds of calls to a number I didn't recognize. Calls that lasted for hours. Calls that happened late at night when I was asleep. I did a reverse phone lookup. The number belonged to a woman named Jennifer. Jennifer Morrison. I searched for her on social media. There she was. Blonde. Beautiful. Young. Maybe 28. She worked at David's firm. She was an analyst in his department. Her Facebook page was full of photos from expensive restaurants, designer clothes, luxury vacations, and in several recent photos, just barely visible in the background, was a man who looked suspiciously like my husband. I zoomed in on one photo. It was him. It was definitely him. Sitting at a cafe, partially obscured by Jennifer's selfie angle, but unmistakably there. The caption read, "Finally found my forever. Life is about to get so much better." The photo was dated 2 weeks ago. I felt something break inside me. Some last fragile piece of hope or denial that had been holding on. David was having an affair. David had been having an affair for God knows how long. With a woman who worked with him. A woman he saw every day while I was at home taking care of our son. And now he wanted me dead so he could be with her. So he could collect the insurance money. So he could start his new life without the inconvenience of a divorce, without splitting assets, without shared custody. He was going to kill me and make it look like an accident and then play the grieving widow while he moved on with his young, beautiful mistress and raised my son with the money from my death. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It was white-hot and all-consuming. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break things. I wanted to get on a plane right now and confront him and hurt him the way he was planning to hurt me. But I couldn't. Because Tommy was there. Because I had to be smart. Because rage wouldn't save my life or my son's future. I had to think. I had to plan. I had to beat him at his own game. I looked at my flight information. I was supposed to fly home tomorrow afternoon. Landing at 6 in the evening. David knew my flight number. He knew what time I'd land. He knew what route I'd take home from the airport. He'd probably already done something to my car. Tampered with the brakes maybe. Or cut something that would fail at just the right moment on just the right curve of just the right road. I imagined it. Driving home in the dark. Maybe it would be raining, that would make it more believable. I'd press the brakes and nothing would happen. I'd pump them desperately, uselessly. The car would accelerate downhill. I'd see the curve coming. I'd know I wasn't going to make it. Would I have time to think about Tommy? Would my last thoughts be of my son? And David would get the call. "Officer, there's been an accident. Your wife. I'm so sorry." He'd cry. He'd play the devastated husband so well. People would gather around him. They'd bring casseroles and tell him how sorry they were. They'd say I was so young, so vibrant, what a tragedy. And all the while, he'd be planning his new life. His life with Jennifer. His life with my money. His life built on my grave. Not if I could help it. I canceled my flight home. I booked a new one, leaving earlier than scheduled, routing through a different city. I wouldn't tell David. I'd let him think I was coming home at the expected time. But I needed more than that. I needed proof. I needed evidence. I needed something that would protect me and Tommy and expose David for exactly what he was. I called Tommy's phone again, but from a different number. A voice-over internet service that couldn't be traced back to me. He answered on the first ring. "Mommy. It's me, baby. Are you alone?" "Yes. Daddy is downstairs watching TV." "Good. Listen, I need you to do something for me. Something very important. Can you do that?" "Yes. I need you to find Daddy's phone. Can you get it without him knowing?" There was a pause. Then, maybe. He always puts it on his desk when he comes home from work. And he always takes a shower before dinner. I could get it then. My brilliant, clever boy. "That's perfect, Tommy. When he goes to take his shower, I need you to get his phone and look at his text messages. Especially any messages from someone named Jennifer. Can you read them to me?" "I can try. But what if he catches me?" "He won't. You're too smart. Too careful. But Tommy, if you feel scared at all, if you think you might get caught, just put the phone back. Okay. Your safety is more important than anything else. Okay. And Tommy? After you look at the messages, I need you to do one more thing. I need you to use Daddy's phone to record him. If you hear him on the phone talking about his plans, can you turn on the voice recorder and let it run? How do I do that? I walked him through it. How to find the voice recorder app. How to start recording. How to hide the phone somewhere it wouldn't be noticed but could still pick up sound. I'm scared, Mommy. I know, baby. But you're being so brave. And this is going to help us. This is going to keep us safe. Can you do this for me? Yes. I can do it. That's my boy. I love you so much. I love you too. When we hung up, I felt sick with guilt. I just asked my 6-year-old son to spy on his father. To sneak and lie and record evidence against his own parent. What kind of mother does that? But what choice did I have? If I didn't protect us now, there might not be a later. There might not be a second chance. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I went through the motions of the conference. I smiled and nodded and participated in discussions. But my mind was miles away. My mind was with Tommy. In my house. With my husband who wanted me dead. That night, Tommy called me again from his own phone. He was whispering, his voice barely audible. I got the messages, Mommy. What did they say? They're really gross. He says he loves her. He says he can't wait to be with her forever. He says. Tommy's voice broke. He says after tomorrow, everything will be different. I closed my eyes. Did you record anything? Yes. He was on the phone again tonight. I hid his phone under the couch in his office. It's still recording. Should I get it? No. Leave it there for now. We'll get it later. You did so good, Tommy. So good. Mommy. When are you coming home? Tomorrow, baby. Earlier than Daddy thinks. And when I get there, we're going to leave. You and me. We're going to go somewhere safe. What about Daddy? Don't worry about Daddy. Just trust me, okay? Okay. Now go to bed. Get some sleep. And remember, act normal tomorrow. Don't let Daddy know anything is wrong. I will. Good night, Mommy. Good night, my brave boy. After we hung up, I sat in the dark hotel room and cried. I cried for the marriage I thought I had. I cried for the trust that had been shattered. I cried for my son who'd lost his innocence in the worst possible way. But mostly I cried tears of rage. Because David had taken everything from me. My sense of security, my faith in love, my belief that I could trust another human being completely. But he hadn't won. Not yet. Because I was still alive. Because Tommy had warned me. Because I was going to fight back with everything I had. I spent the rest of the night planning. I contacted a divorce lawyer through an emergency consultation service. I explained the situation, vaguely at first, then in more detail when I realized she believed me. When I realized she'd seen cases like this before. You need to document everything, she said. Every text. Every phone record. Every financial transaction. And you need to get yourself and your son somewhere safe before you confront him. I'm working on it. Do you have family? Friends he doesn't know about? My sister. She lives 3 hours away. He's only met her a handful of times. Go there. As soon as you get home, get your son and go there. Don't tell your husband. Don't tell anyone who might tell him. Just go. What about after? What about divorce proceedings? What about custody? One step at a time. First we keep you alive. Then we build the case. Then we make sure he never gets unsupervised access to your son again. The word alive hung in the air between us. Thank you, I whispered. Be safe, Sarah. Call me as soon as you're secure. I hung up and continued planning. I packed my bags. I arranged for a rental car from the airport. A different airport than David expected me to fly into. I texted my sister with a coded message we'd established years ago, back when we were kids dealing with our own family drama. 3 words that meant I need help immediately. She responded right away. Come here. Doors open. No questions. I loved her so much in that moment. For trusting me. For being ready. For not asking why. The early morning light was starting to filter through the hotel curtains when I finally tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face. His smile. His lies. His hands that had held me and would have killed me without hesitation. I thought about all the times I'd kissed him goodbye in the morning. All the times I'd said, "I love you," and meant it with every fiber of my being. All the times I'd trusted him with my life. I'd been trusting him with my life all along. I just hadn't realized he'd been planning to take it. The flight home was the longest few hours of my life. Every minute felt like an eternity. Every announcement from the pilot made my heart race. Every person who walked past my seat made me jump. I kept checking my phone even though it was on airplane mode. Kept refreshing the screen like I might magically receive a message from Tommy saying everything was okay. But there was nothing. Just silence. Just me and my fear and my determination 30,000 feet above the ground. When we finally landed, I grabbed my bag and pushed through the crowd with single-minded focus. I didn't wait for my checked luggage. I went straight to the rental car counter. The clerk was friendly and chatty. "Welcome home. Was it a good trip?" I wanted to laugh. Or scream. "Yes. Thank you. I'm in a bit of a hurry." "No problem. You're all set." The car is a blue Honda in Space 23. I found the car, threw my bag in the back and started driving. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. It was 3 in the afternoon. Tommy would be getting out of school in 30 minutes. David wouldn't expect me home for at least 3 more hours. I had time. I could do this. I drove to Tommy's school and parked where I could see the exit, but where David wouldn't notice me if he happened to drive by. The minutes ticked past like hours. Finally, the bell rang. Children poured out of the building. And there was Tommy, my beautiful boy in his blue backpack, walking slowly, looking down at his feet. He looked small, vulnerable, scared. I got out of the car and called his name. "Tommy." His head snapped up. His eyes went wide. And then he was running toward me, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders, his face crumpling with relief and tears. I caught him in my arms and held him so tight I might have hurt him. But I couldn't let go. I couldn't stop holding my son, my brave, brilliant son who had saved both our lives. "Mommy," he sobbed into my shoulder. I was so scared. "I thought maybe you wouldn't come. I thought maybe Daddy." "Sure, baby. I'm here. I'm right here. And we're going to be okay." I quickly loaded him into the car. A few other parents were watching, but I didn't care. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. I had bigger problems. "Where are we going?" Tommy asked as I pulled out of the parking lot. "Aunt Michelle's house. Remember? We're going to stay with her for a little while." "What about Daddy?" "Daddy doesn't need to know where we are right now." Tommy was quiet for a moment. Then, "Is Daddy bad, Mommy?" The question broke my heart. How do you tell a 6-year-old that his father is a monster? How do you explain betrayal to someone who still believes in fairy tales and happy endings? "Daddy made some very bad choices," I said carefully. "And right now, we need to be somewhere safe while the grown-ups figure things out. Because he wanted to hurt you." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. My 6-year-old son stating a fact that no child should ever have to know. "Yes," I said softly. "Because he wanted to hurt me." "I hate him," Tommy whispered. "You don't have to hate him. But you also don't have to see him right now. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to have lots of different feelings." "I want to hate him. He's bad." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "Right now, let's just focus on getting somewhere safe." "Okay." He nodded and stared out the window. I could see his reflection in the glass. He looked older somehow, like he'd aged years in just a few days. "What happened?" she asked. "You look terrible." "I'll explain everything. But first I need to get Tommy inside. And I need to call the police." Her eyes widened. "The police? Please, Michelle. Just trust me." She looked at Tommy, who was awake now and climbing out of the car. She looked at my face. And she nodded. "Okay. Come inside. Both of you." We went into her small, cozy house. She'd never married, never had kids. She was a veterinarian who worked long hours and came home to 2 cats and a life she built on her own terms. I'd always admired her independence. Now I envied it. She made Tommy hot chocolate and turned on cartoons. She gave me tea that I couldn't drink because my hands were shaking too badly. And then she sat across from me at her kitchen table and said, Tell me. So I did. I told her everything. From Tommy's phone call to the affair to the life insurance to the plan to kill me. I told her about the messages and the recordings and the evidence I'd gathered. Michelle's face went through a dozen emotions. Shock, disbelief, horror, rage. That son of a bitch, she finally said. That absolute son of a bitch. I need to call the police. But I'm scared. What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm crazy? You have proof. You have recordings. You have evidence. They'll believe you. What if they don't take it seriously until it's too late? Michelle reached across the table and grabbed my hands. Sarah, listen to me. You did everything right. You trusted your son. You got out. You're safe. Now we make sure you stay safe. Okay. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I'm so scared, Michelle. I know. But you're also the strongest person I know. And you're not alone. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. I called the police. A detective came to Michelle's house within an hour. Her name was Detective Rodriguez, and she had kind eyes that turned hard when I told her my story. She listened to everything. She took notes. She asked careful questions. And when I played her the recording Tommy had made, David's voice clearly discussing the accident, talking about insurance money, talking about his new life with Jennifer, her jaw tightened. Mrs. Patterson, she said quietly, I need you to know that what you're describing is conspiracy to commit murder. These are very serious allegations. I know. And I have more than allegations. I have proof. I showed her everything. The phone records. The financial transfers. The text messages between David and Jennifer. The life insurance documents. All of it. She spent a long time reviewing the evidence. Then she looked up at me. You were right to come here. You were right to trust your son. This is clearly a credible threat to your life. The relief I felt was overwhelming. She believed me. She actually believed me. What happens now? I asked. Now we bring your husband in for questioning. We'll need to examine your vehicle, the one at your home, to see if it's been tampered with. We'll need formal statements from both you and your son. And we'll need to move quickly before your husband realizes what's happening. He's been calling me all afternoon. He knows something is wrong. That's actually good. It means he hasn't had time to cover his tracks. Where is he now? Probably at home. Or maybe at my sister's house looking for us. Give me the address. I'll send officers there immediately. I rattled off our home address. The address of the house I'd chosen with David. The house where we were supposed to grow old together. The house that had become a crime scene before the crime even happened. Detective Rodriguez made several phone calls. I heard her talking in low, urgent tones. Words like attempted murder, and immediate danger, and secure the suspect. Tommy came into the kitchen looking worried. Mommy? What's happening? I pulled him onto my lap. Remember how I told you the grown-ups would figure things out? That's what's happening now. This nice police detective is going to make sure we're safe. Detective Rodriguez smiled at Tommy. You did a very brave thing, young man. You might have saved your mother's life. Tommy looked at her seriously. Is my daddy going to jail? The detective glanced at me, then back at Tommy. That's going to depend on a lot of things. But I promise you we're going to make sure you and your mom are safe. That's the most important thing right now. My phone buzzed again. Another call from David. This one Detective Rodriguez told me to answer. Put it on speaker, she instructed. And just act normal. Don't tell him where you are. I answered with shaking hands. Hello. Sarah. David's voice was frantic. Oh, thank God. Where are you? I've been so worried. Your flight landed over an hour ago. Why aren't you answering? Why aren't you here? The concern in his voice was so convincing. If I didn't know what I knew, I'd believe he was genuinely worried. I'd feel guilty for making him panic. But I did know. And his acting just made me angrier. I'm fine, David, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a change of plans. What kind of change? Where are you? Is Tommy with you? Tommy's fine. We're both fine. Sarah, you're scaring me. What's going on? Just tell me where you are and I'll come get you. I bet you will, I thought. I bet you'd love to know exactly where we are. Detective Rodriguez nodded at me encouragingly. We're not coming home right now, David. I need some space to think. Space? What are you talking about? Sarah, what happened? Did I do something wrong? The audacity of that question almost made me laugh. Did he do something wrong? Did he do something wrong? We'll talk later, I said. I just need some time. Time for what? Sarah, please, you're not making any sense. At least tell me you're safe. At least tell me Tommy's okay. We're safe, I said. And then because I couldn't help myself, I added, no thanks to you. There was a pause on the other end of the line. A long pause. When David spoke again, his voice had changed. It was colder. Flatter. What's that supposed to mean? I think you know. Another pause. I could almost hear him thinking, calculating, trying to figure out what I knew and how I knew it. Sarah, I don't know what's going on, but I think you need to come home so we can talk about this like adults. I'm not coming home, David. Sarah. I know about Jennifer. Silence. Complete and total silence. I don't know what you're talking about, he finally said, but his voice gave him away. It was too careful. Too controlled. I know about the affair. I know about the money you've been moving. I know about the insurance policy. I know everything, David. Sarah, you're not thinking clearly. Let me come get you and we can. I know you were planning to kill me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Detective Rodriguez was watching me intently. Michelle had appeared in the doorway, her hand over her mouth. David laughed. Actually laughed. That's insane. Sarah, that's absolutely insane. Is this some kind of breakdown? Are you having some kind of episode? Tommy heard you, I said quietly. He heard you on the phone. He heard you planning it. Another long silence. When David spoke again, all pretense was gone. Put Tommy on the phone. No. I said put my son on the phone. He's not your son anymore. Not after what you tried to do. Sarah, I'm warning you. You're warning me? You're warning me. I felt my voice rising, all the fear and rage and betrayal pouring out. You were going to kill me, David. You were going to murder me, and make it look like an accident so you could run off with your girlfriend and collect insurance money, and you're warning me? You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. I have recordings. I have messages. I have everything. I could hear his breathing on the other end of the line. Fast. Panicked. Where are you? He asked, and now his voice was dangerous. Really dangerous. Detective Rodriguez made a cutting motion across her throat. End the call. Goodbye, David, I said and hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone. Michelle picked it up and set it on the table. Tommy was crying quietly, his face buried against my shoulder. You did good, Detective Rodriguez said. That was very brave. And very smart. He basically confirmed everything with that call. What happens now? Michelle asked. Now we go get him. An hour later, Detective Rodriguez called to tell me they'd arrested David at our house. He'd been in the garage, with my car, which had, as suspected, been tampered with. The brake lines had been partially cut, enough that they would fail under pressure, but not so much that it would be immediately obvious. If I'd driven that car home from the airport like I was supposed to, I'd be dead. There was no question. No doubt. I would have pressed the brakes. Nothing would have happened. I would have crashed. And David would have played the grieving husband while cashing in on my death. He's not talking, Detective Rodriguez told me. Lawyered up immediately. But honestly, we don't need him to talk. The evidence speaks for itself. What about Jennifer? I asked. We're bringing her in for questioning too. There's evidence she knew about the plan, which makes her an accessory. I thought about that young, beautiful woman who'd been sleeping with my husband, who'd been planning a future funded by my death. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not one bit. That night, I lay in Michelle's guest room with Tommy curled up beside me. He'd refused to sleep alone, and I couldn't blame him. I couldn't sleep alone either. We needed each other. We needed to feel safe. Mommy, he whispered in the dark. Yes, baby. Did I do the right thing? Telling you about Daddy. I pulled him closer. You did the most right thing. You saved us, Tommy. You saved us both. I feel bad, though. He's my daddy. I know. And it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to feel sad and confused and angry all at the same time. Will we ever see him again? I didn't know how to answer that. Didn't know what would happen with custody battles and prison sentences and all the legal complications that were surely coming. I don't know, I said honestly. But whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay. We have each other. And that's the most important thing. He was quiet for a while. Then, Mommy. Yes. I'm glad you're not dead. I started crying then. Silently so he wouldn't hear. But the tears came anyway, soaking into the pillow. Me too, baby, I whispered. Me too. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. Harder than the fear. Harder than the initial shock. Because now I had to face the reality of what my life had become. What it would never be again. David was denied bail. The evidence against him was too strong, the threat to my life too credible. He sat in jail awaiting trial while I tried to pick up the pieces of the life he'd shattered. The media got wind of the story. It was too sensational not to make headlines. Husband accused of plotting wife's murder for insurance money. Young son saves mother's life after overhearing father's death plot. Reporters camped outside Michelle's house. They called my phone. They tried to friend me on social media. Everyone wanted the story. Everyone wanted the details. I refused all interviews. I just wanted to protect Tommy. To give him some semblance of normalcy in a world that had become utterly abnormal. The divorce proceedings started. David's lawyer tried to fight it, claiming I was acting emotionally, that I was being vindictive, that I was turning Tommy against his father. But my lawyer, the same one I'd consulted from the hotel, shut that down fast. Your client attempted to murder my client, she said coldly in one hearing. There will be no custody. There will be no visitation. There will be a divorce, and Mr. Patterson will be lucky if that's all he faces. I learned things about David I'd never known. Things the police investigation uncovered. The affair with Jennifer had been going on for 2 years. 2 years of lies and secret meetings and a double life I'd been completely oblivious to. He'd been planning my death for at least 6 months. Shopping for hitmen on the dark web before deciding to do it himself. Researching untraceable poisons before settling on the staged car accident as the cleanest option. He'd practiced cutting brake lines on a junk car he'd bought specifically for that purpose. He'd timed the routes I usually took. He'd planned every detail with the same precision he applied to his investment strategies. I'd been married to a stranger. I'd shared a bed with a stranger. I'd created a child with a stranger. The betrayal went so deep I sometimes felt like I couldn't breathe. Like I was drowning on dry land. How had I not seen it? How had I been so blind? But my therapist, yes, I started seeing a therapist because of course I did, helped me understand that I wasn't blind. I wasn't stupid. I was trusting. And trust is not a weakness. He exploited your trust, she told me. He weaponized your love. That's on him. Not on you. It helped. A little. Some days more than others. Tommy struggled too. He had nightmares. He'd wake up screaming, convinced that David was in the house, coming to hurt us. I'd hold him and rock him and promise him we were safe, that the doors were locked, that Detective Rodriguez had promised to keep watch over us. He started seeing a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. I sat in the waiting room during his sessions, fighting the urge to burst in and rescue him from having to talk about what he'd experienced. But he needed to talk. He needed to process. He needed help in ways I couldn't provide, no matter how much I loved him. He asks about his father, the psychologist told me after one session. He wants to know if David ever really loved him. The question destroyed me. What did you tell him? I told him that sometimes people's minds get sick in ways that make them do terrible things. That doesn't mean they never loved anyone. It just means they lost their way very badly. Do you believe that? I asked. Do you think David ever really loved us? She was quiet for a moment. I think David loves David. And everyone else is secondary to that. But does Tommy need to believe his father once loved him? Yes. Because otherwise, he'll spend his whole life wondering what was wrong with him that made him unlovable. So we let Tommy believe that David had loved him once. That the father he remembered from before, the one who played catch and read bedtime stories, had been real even if that man was gone now. I don't know if it was the truth, but it was the kindness Tommy deserved. Jennifer was arrested as an accessory. The evidence showed she'd known about David's plan. She'd helped him research life insurance policies. She'd even suggested specific ways to make my death look accidental. In exchange for a lighter sentence, she agreed to testify against David. I watched her on the stand during the preliminary hearing. She looked smaller somehow, less beautiful. Just another person who'd made terrible choices and was now facing the consequences. She cried when the prosecutor asked her if she understood that David had been planning to kill someone. "I didn't think he'd really do it," she sobbed. "I thought it was just talk. Just fantasy." I didn't believe her. And apparently neither did the jury. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I had to testify. I had to sit in that courtroom and look at David, my husband, the father of my child, and tell a room full of strangers about how he'd planned to murder me. David never looked at me. Not once. He stared straight ahead, his expression blank, while I described finding the evidence, while I played the recordings, while I explained how close I'd come to driving that car home. But when Tommy testified, yes, my 6-year-old son had to testify, David cried. Real tears running down his face as Tommy described, in his small, scared voice, what he'd overheard that night. "I heard Daddy say Mommy's name," Tommy said, gripping the teddy bear the court had given him. "And he said something about making sure. About brakes. About an accident. And how did that make you feel?" the prosecutor asked gently. "Scared," Tommy whispered. "I was really scared." "Why were you scared?" "Because I thought Daddy was going to hurt Mommy. And I loved my mommy." I was crying by then. Half the courtroom was crying. Even the judge looked affected. David's lawyer tried to argue that Tommy was too young to understand what he'd heard. That he'd been coached. That his testimony wasn't reliable. But the recordings didn't lie. The tampered brake lines didn't lie. The affair and the insurance policy and the money transfers didn't lie. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder. Attempted murder. Insurance fraud. A dozen other charges I couldn't even keep track of. The judge sentenced him to 25 years to life. I felt nothing when the sentence was read. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just emptiness. Just the hollow echo of a life that was over. David was led away in handcuffs. He looked back once, his eyes finding mine across the courtroom. And in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Regret. Not for what he'd tried to do, but for getting caught. For losing his freedom. For the life with Jennifer that would never happen now. He didn't say anything. Didn't mouth sorry or I love you or any of the things a normal person might say. He just looked at me with those empty eyes and then he was gone. And I was free. It's been 2 years since that phone call in the hotel lobby. 2 years since my son saved my life. 2 years since my world fell apart and I had to build a new one from the pieces. Tommy is 8 now. He's in therapy and he's doing better. The nightmares have mostly stopped. He smiles more. He laughs more. He's starting to look like a regular kid again instead of a child carrying the weight of adult trauma. We live in a new city now. A fresh start where no one knows our story. Where we're not the woman who almost got murdered. And the brave boy who saved his mother. We're just Sarah and Tommy. A small family making our way. I went back to work. Real work this time, not just consulting from home. I have an office and colleagues and projects that challenge me. I'm rebuilding my career, my identity. My sense of self that had been so wrapped up in being David's wife that I'd almost lost who I was. Michelle visits often. She's been my rock through all of this. The sister who never questioned, never doubted, never made me feel like I was crazy for believing my 6-year-old son over my respectable husband. "You trusted your instincts," she told me recently. "You listened to Tommy when every part of society tells mothers not to take their kids seriously. You saved yourself. But I didn't save myself. Tommy did. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure he knows that he's a hero. Not just my hero. A real hero." We don't talk about David much anymore. Tommy mentions him occasionally. "Do you think Daddy thinks about us?" he asked last week. "Maybe," I said. "I don't know what he thinks about in there." "Do you think he's sorry?" I thought about that for a long time. I think he's sorry he got caught. But I don't know if he's sorry for what he tried to do. Tommy nodded, processing this. Then he said something that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. "I'm not sorry we left. I like our new life." And it's true. We do have a new life. Different from what I'd planned. Different from what I'd imagined. But ours. Honest. Safe. I date now occasionally. It's hard. Trust doesn't come easily anymore. When a man smiles at me, I find myself wondering what he's hiding. When someone acts too perfect, I get suspicious instead of flattered. But my therapist says that's normal. That it will get easier. That not everyone is David. That real love exists even if my marriage was built on lies. I want to believe her. Some days I do. The life insurance policy was voided, of course. You don't get to collect on a policy when you try to murder the insured person. The money David had been stealing went into a restitution fund for Tommy's future. The house was sold to pay for legal fees. I don't miss any of it. Not the house, not the money, not the life I thought I had. Because that life was never real. It was a beautiful lie, and beautiful lies are more dangerous than ugly truths. I teach Tommy that now. I teach him to trust his instincts, to speak up when something feels wrong, to never dismiss his own feelings just because an adult tells him to. You knew something was wrong, I remind him. Your gut told you. And you were brave enough to tell me. I was scared you wouldn't believe me, he admits. I will always believe you, I promise. Always. It's a promise I'll keep for the rest of his life. People ask me sometimes how I survived it, how I moved on, how I'm not angrier, more bitter, more broken. The truth is I am angry sometimes. I am bitter sometimes. I am broken in ways that will never fully heal. But I'm also alive. Tommy is alive. We have each other. We have safety and truth and the chance to build something real. And that's more than many people get. I think about that alternate timeline sometimes. The one where I dismissed Tommy's fears. The one where I came home on time, got in my car, drove away from the airport with faulty brakes. I think about the curve where I would have crashed. The moment I would have realized I couldn't stop. The terror in my last seconds. I think about Tommy being told his mother died in a tragic accident. Growing up with David, never knowing his father was a murderer. Never knowing he could have saved me if only I'd listened. That timeline haunts me more than anything David actually did. Because in that timeline I failed my son. I failed myself. I let social conditioning and trust and the desire to be a good wife override the most important instinct a mother has, to protect her child and to listen when that child says something is wrong. I didn't fail. Because I listened. Because I trusted Tommy even when it seemed impossible. Even when it meant believing my husband was capable of murder. And that choice, that single moment of choosing to believe, saved both our lives. If I could go back and tell the old Sarah anything, the woman I was before that phone call, it would be this. Trust your children. Trust your instincts. Trust that small voice inside you that says something is wrong, even when everything looks perfect on the outside. Because sometimes perfect is just a mask for poison. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones most capable of hurting us. Sometimes the only thing standing between us and disaster is a child's courage and a mother's willingness to listen. Tommy asks me sometimes if I'm glad we went through this. If I think we're better off now. It's a complicated question. I'm glad we're alive. I'm glad we escaped. I'm glad we have truth instead of lies. But I wish it hadn't been necessary. I wish Tommy hadn't lost his innocence. I wish I hadn't lost my ability to trust easily. I wish we could have learned these lessons some other way. But we can't choose our lessons. We can only choose what we do with them. And what I'm doing is building a life where Tommy grows up knowing he's safe. Where he knows his voice matters. Where he knows that speaking truth, even difficult, scary truth, is always the right choice. I'm building a life where I'm strong on my own. Where my happiness doesn't depend on a man. Where I know my worth beyond being someone's wife or someone's mother. I'm building a life that's smaller than the one I had but infinitely more real. Some nights when Tommy is asleep and the house is quiet, I sit alone and think about everything that happened. I think about how close we came to the edge. How easily it could have gone the other way. And I feel grateful. Not for the trauma. Not for the betrayal. Not for any of what we went through. But grateful that Tommy called me. Grateful that I answered. Grateful that I made the choice to believe him even when it seemed insane. Grateful that we're still here, still together, still fighting, still surviving, still building. That's what I want people to understand. That survival isn't pretty. Recovery isn't linear. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. But it's possible. even after the worst betrayal, even after someone you love tries to end your life, even after your child has to save you from their own father. It's possible to wake up one morning and realize the nightmares are less frequent, that the fear is less consuming, that you can imagine a future that doesn't include constant looking over your shoulder. It's possible to laugh again, to trust again even if it's harder now, to love again even if it's scarier now. It's possible to be broken and still be whole, to be traumatized and still be strong, to be a survivor and still be so much more than what happened to you. Tommy knows this too. He's young, but he's wise in ways children shouldn't have to be. He knows that bad things happen to good people, that families break apart, that sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. But he also knows that he's brave, that he's strong, that he saved his mother's life when he was just 6 years old. And when he's older, when he looks back on this time, I hope he remembers not just the fear and the pain but also the courage. The moment he chose to speak up. The moment he trusted himself even though he was just a child. I hope he remembers that he mattered. That his voice mattered. That he changed the course of our destiny simply by being brave enough to tell the truth. Because that's the lesson in all of this. That's the takeaway that I hold on to when everything else feels overwhelming. One voice can change everything. One moment of courage can alter the entire trajectory of a life. One choice to speak, to listen, to believe can be the difference between tragedy and survival. For us, that voice was Tommy's. That courage was a 6-year-old boy calling his mother in tears. That choice was mine, to trust him, to believe him, to act on his warning even when it seemed impossible. And it saved us. We're not the family I thought we'd be. We're not living the life I'd planned. But we're alive. We're safe. We're together. And we're free. Free from lies. Free from danger. Free from the weight of loving someone who was actively planning our destruction. That freedom is worth more than the picture-perfect life I lost. It's worth more than the house and the marriage and the illusion of happiness. Because it's real. And real, I've learned, is the only thing that matters. So when people ask me how I survived, how I moved on, how I'm doing now, I tell them the truth. I survived because my son was braver than I was. I moved on because I had no choice. You either move forward or you let the past consume you. And I'm doing okay. Some days better than others. Some days still hard. But I'm here. We're here. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. 2 years later, I sit on the porch of our new home with a cup of coffee and watch Tommy play in the yard. He's building something with sticks and rocks, explaining to himself how the structure will work, making up elaborate stories about the fortress he's creating. He looks happy. He looks safe. He looks like a child who's learning to just be a child again. And I realize something in that moment. Something profound and simple and true. We made it. Not without scars. Not without wounds that still ache sometimes. Not without memories that will never fully fade. But we made it to the other side of the nightmare. We made it to a place where mornings are peaceful and nights are safe. And the future is ours to write however we choose. The phone call that should have been nothing, just a child wanting to talk to his mother, became the call that saved our lives. And I answered. That's the choice I'll carry with me forever. Not the betrayal. Not the fear. Not the trauma. The choice to answer. The choice to listen. The choice to believe. Because in the end, that's what saved us. Not luck. Not fate. Not chance. Just a mother who loved her son enough to trust him. And a son who loved his mother enough to save her. That's our story. Not the story of how we almost died, but the story of how we chose to live. And we're still choosing it. Every single day. We're still here. We're still fighting. We're still surviving. We're still building our lives piece by piece, day by day, moment by moment. And that, I've learned, is what victory looks like. Not perfect. Not pretty. Not without pain. But real. And ours. And enough. Always enough. For everyone reading this story, I want you to remember something. Trust the people who love you. Trust the children who speak up. Trust the instincts that tell you something is wrong even when everything looks right. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is believe the impossible. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is walk away from perfect. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is protect yourself so you can protect the ones who need you. We can't always choose what happens to us, But we can always choose how we respond. We can choose courage over comfort, truth over illusion, safety over status. Choose wisely. Choose bravely. Choose yourself and the ones you love. Because in the end, that's all that matters. Not the life you thought you'd have, but the life you fought for. The life you survived for. The life you chose day after difficult day to keep living. That's the life worth having. That's the story worth telling. And if my story helps even one person trust their instincts, listen to their child, walk away from danger before it's too late, then sharing it was worth every difficult word. Stay safe. Stay strong. Stay brave. And always, always answer when your child calls.